I don't need the translate on, but I guess it might stay on anyways.
All,
All
all
right.
my
Well,
grad all my graduate work was pre-COVID. I actually graduated with a doctorate December 2019, and then of course March of 2020 is when it all happened.
that's
But
funny.
this, I mean, this was all available, right? But education's caught up finally. It looks like
Right.
to the world of Zoom and so on.
Well, so basically, like, let me explain what I have to do. So I took basically what you gave me. I started before and just kind of did all right, if I was running summer school myself and went through it and kind of like did the numbers and I'll kind of walk you through it. But I've got a Word document that I'm going to jump to. I also going to go to your Excel sheet. And so basically I need to have a conversation of what I kind of view summer school as. I might ask you certain questions as we go, but I'll probably maybe have you kind of just talk more towards the end. So I feel like it's going to be like me trying to. It's going to be me going through as if I'm showing you how I would run summer school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So you're just presenting your summer school plan.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Um, so let's see here. And yeah, my backup plan is I have my phone right here recording what I'm seeing on the computer just in case.
Smart. Yeah. Double up.
Uh-huh. Uh, I'm gonna do screen. Okay, so it should see my screen. There's our Teams. I'm
Two.
going to pull up. All right, so it should be outlined for summer school.
Yep, I see it.
Perfect. So, uh, my first thing was establishing numbers of students who are attending summer school. Obviously, I think that's the biggest issue with any time with dealing with summer school is you're not going to know the numbers, and for another basically 3 weeks. I'm sure. Do you look at like projected at this point, or do you not even try to speculate?
Yeah, so we look at the number of kids that are currently enrolled in credit recovery.
Okay.
Um, like so for us, we use Edgenuity. The counselors load those courses as
Okay.
kids are denied credit. So we have a base number of kids that are qualified to attend. And then we target kids that have severe deficits, so they're
Okay.
missing multiple courses. And summer school would really benefit them because a lot of kids that are missing one course, two courses, they can make that up during the school year. So we really try and gear it towards kids that are a full grade level or multiple grade levels behind.
Okay.
Um, but it's open to everybody. So until we
Right.
fill the seats, and that so we definitely have more kids than we do seats, but
Okay.
we usually are around for us. Klein Oak is normally around 400 kids that will come based on that history.
Okay.
So we use prior numbers as well as how many kids could attend to kind of
Well, when I
determine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, when I was going through it, I'm like, all right, let's just start out. I go, obviously, you're focused on your core. I'm like, all right, math, English, science, history, and then just non-core. And so I just started out. It was like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1 or something like that. And then I'm like, that's probably not going to be enough. And so in my head, I was like, all right, let's just do four for all of them. And so I had 20 teachers, and then I did all right, so our money's allocated, and so I took the numbers that we had where we dealt with 2,700 plus the prepping for each one of those teachers. And I was like, all right, well, that's 2,800 for a 12 days for them. I'm like, okay, so that's going to be 56. So there's no way I can have 20 teachers. And this is
Right.
before I looked at your Excel sheet. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be a little tricky. So I was like, all right, let's go back. Okay, I got it down to like 16. And you're like, all right, well, where do you take away from? Obviously, I've spent some time looking at the TAPR reports, and so I actually just did basically a big deep dive into those. And so it looks like obviously English is always a priority. It seems like at Klein Oak. When I talked to Brittany Anderson, she mentioned that the writing skills from basically middle school to high school, there's a little bit of a gap there, especially going into that English one EOC. And so I'm assuming for sure you have to have four English teachers in that section. So that's where I kind of started there. And so this is where I jumped in to your worksheet, and then I fell in love with Excel because I love Excel. And so basically, I just went through and I just started. I put in our allocated budget. It's nice that it's already got the worksheet out for you. And so it obviously started with two teachers here. And then I just started kind of copying and pasting and just seeing where my money value was. So I think when I started, we were at about a $20,000 budget. And so when I finally got up to, I started with like three teachers here, three for math. I think I only did two for science to original start. Social studies was two, and then two for non-core subjects. And then was looking at, I didn't even realize that we got to pay for buses with this money. And so I was like, okay. So that was another understanding. And then I forgot that we do the EOC testing. I remember Berkovich always doing those classes, and I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. So I need to make sure we allocate for that part of it. So that's when I started going back up to the model and then would just basically add a teacher until I got to within $1,000. I guess it's a little, I have about a little over $1,000 left. My question for you with this chart was the your counselors, administrators, nurses, they when I started putting money in here, it doesn't affect my bottom line. But obviously, I think, like for instance, you at least want like a clinic aide to be on site in case a kid's sick or has to do something. I know counselors are probably around for at least one more week, but like I'm assuming you want to have some of those types of things. Does this come out of that allocated money? Is my question.
So on the left of that spreadsheet,
Yep.
you see the different codes for the
Yeah.
different school funding sources that
Okay.
it comes from. So that 46,000 and change is the SCC total, and then
Okay.
CAT funds are how the secretary, the admin, the nurse, and so on,
Okay.
how those folks get paid. So um, those are um, the budget number that district gave me, that finance gave me, was purely the SCC total.
Now, do you have to worry about your those cap funds, or do you have to like estimate that part of it and then go to Hensley or to go to finance to make sure that that part's not going to be an issue at all for funds?
No, that they didn't set a budget number for that. It's pretty set.
Okay.
They do have two lines for counselor, but this is a generic form. So at high school, we're a standalone, so I'll just have one administrator, one counselor, one nurse, and nurse or aide, depending on what we can staff. And then I'll have one secretary. Um, but at the middle school level, what they do to just watch the facility fees is they
Yeah.
will combine three middle schools together, and so they call them hubs. And so like our feeder pattern, Wonderlic, Hophius, and who else goes over there? Another middle school that I believe is being hosted at Wonderlic this year. So they'll have multiple counselors, multiple administrators representing each of their schools, but still one AC budget, right? One electrical budget.
Okay.
And so that's why I do it that way.
Okay.
Because it's a lot more expensive to run it at three different campuses than one campus. But with Klein Oak being the high schools all having enough kids, they do it that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I've learned from being an assistant athletic director was budgets in general. Like, obviously, when you're in high school as like a high school coach, your budget's very limited, it seems like. The district tries to control a lot of what's being spent, and they're and like Klein, like they collect all the funds from gate and from concession stand, where like when I was at Oak Ridge, we got to collect that and save that into like our booster club. And so it's interesting how some of that runs. But like for me, it's like I'm in charge of our central gym, so I have a different budget than say our basketball coaches. And so each basketball coach has a different budget. I run a group that is in charge of all of our sports and rec trips on campus. So I have a separate budget for them. So like I got to have a student group go in and allocate for like our treasury board for students for money. And so like we use that to like go to Rockets games and like Dynamo. So it's a lot of fun. And then like there's a catch-all where it's the entire athletic budget. So like my boss has one. So like if I have an if some coaches have over a budget and other coaches are under budget, it basically goes under him for a whole overseeing. So like it's interesting to kind of see this because you never really see the number part of this as a teacher. And so I
Right.
think this is something obviously you guys probably see way more. Obviously, this is something you think of Thomas, and I always think of like the um just your computer stuff. I know I was talking to uh Miss Baker, and she was just talking. She's like, we don't have any money for programs because every teacher wants to run a different program. It might be different from one school to the next. So, like, being a math guy, I love looking at all this stuff. Is probably the easiest way of kind of putting it.
Yeah, something cool that it's nice to have this collaboration with facilities and finance at the district level. So it for like a school our size, we serve 3,800 kids
Yeah,
from the football fields to the train tracks. It's almost a mile long, right?
right.
Um, so they look at it even going down to like how many chillers we'll use for AC over the summer. And so right now
Really?
I've submitted my where in the building I plan to do this,
Okay.
but it might make more economic sense to move my classrooms down to the freshman wing because the freshman wing only uses one chiller. It's got a dedicated chiller for that part of the
Okay.
building versus right now I'm doing it closer to the commons. And so they
Okay.
may tell me, hey, we're gonna have to run the main campus's whole, the three chillers that run the main campus versus the one chiller down in the wing. So
Okay.
I'm hoping they tell me I'm okay where I'm at right now.
Okay.
But because of the electric bill every month, they may tell me I need to go down to the wing. So
Well, that was actually you're segueing really quick into my next one, which is actually like location. And I actually had the freshman wing only because that's where I think I did it when I was there. And so I was so literally I've got a little picture. I couldn't find a good picture, so this is my somewhat good picture that I
yeah,
had
yeah.
to
And
snip.
in this picture though, the top left corner,
Yeah.
that's the mechanical room, and then
Okay.
just outside of that mechanical room, so that's like you think about your house at home, right?
Yeah.
You've got an evaporator coil up in the attic. That's essentially what that room is, and then on the outside of it is the chiller, as they say, but it's really like the condenser that would be outside of your house,
I got you.
just on a grand scale. Um, so yes, you're right though. In the past, this will be my third year to do it at
Okay.
Oak. Um, and those first two times I've done it, it's always been in the freshman wing.
Okay.
In part because of being in one place and contained, and
Yeah.
it's nice and neat. But then also the second reason is because we've always been under construction. So this is
Oh, I didn't think of that part of it. Yeah.
so we haven't ever used the main building because one year I was doing it, the HVAC was getting updated. The next year I was doing it, they were changing out the carpet.
Right.
So
Okay.
um, this time, no construction this summer.
So we'll see.
And also because of that, because I've had to do it in the wing, I've had to run 3 lunches because we don't have space in that multi-purpose room in the middle of the wing to house everybody all at once. So
Oh,
what that meant for kitchen was they had to have a box truck out there every day. They would make the food in the kitchen, put it in the box truck, roll it over, and then drive it around the campus, and then bring it into the NPR to serve breakfast and lunch every day. So it's a big job for the kitchen, and then also a big job for covering lunches. So I'd had to run 3 lunches.
I
So
got you.
this year, my plan is to put everything close to the commons where lunch happens, and that way kitchen doesn't have to do all that transporting of the food back and forth. And also for me, and monitoring purposes and just safety, I can run just one lunch
Okay.
because I can
And
fit
just
everybody in the commons all at
everyone's going at the same
once.
time.
And so I'm not tied down for an hour and a half. I'll be tied
Could
down for 30 minutes.
could you, and so I mean this is so well here, let me come back to that. I'm just gonna go through just to talk about what I was gonna do on the freshman side, and then I'll come back because I had a good question on that lunch one. But like basically what I was gonna do, we were gonna do obviously you have your science rooms here, so it's easy to go science over here. We're gonna do social studies in the three classrooms over on the side. And then like obviously this is all on the first floor, so English is gonna be those first four, and then I'm going to give math these other ones. And so that would leave us with just the EOC, which is really only coming in 1 or 2 days, I think. And so you can keep your EOCs over here. So basically, I think you could house everything on the first floor. I was thinking about going to the 190 hallway for EOCs, but then if you're saying you can't do that because of the condensers, obviously you have upstairs that would kind of keep everyone. And the idea was if I'm in your position, I would either try to keep Miss Wilder's office there, kind of as a central point if I need to have meetings. But then I really like the idea of obviously the NPR room being opened up here and you can go there, which kind of gets me to what I was going to talk about though is could you host it there and then send all the students down for breakfast or dinner or lunch, even though you're still in the freshman wing now that there's not really construction going on in the building?
I could for sure. But the challenge with that is the number of, because the students' lunch is also when the teachers get their non-paid lunch. And so
Okay.
I want to make sure that I honor their time and they get as much of that 30 minutes as possible.
Okay.
In reality, they're monitoring the kids as they exit and when they return. So in reality, they're really only getting about 25 minutes. But
Okay.
um, to monitor 400 kids, there's lots of places to get lost. And
That
just,
makes
knowing
sense.
the nature of a student that needs summer school, these are typically students from at-risk situations, don't always
Yeah,
make the
they're
best choices.
they're going to want to find ways of not being on task if at all possible. So you try to eliminate that from their situation.
Yeah, and also what I'll do is I'll pull the campus secretary, I'll pull the campus the summer school secretary, the summer school counselor,
Okay.
myself. KPD will also come on campus and help, but it's a skeleton crew monitoring lunch.
Right.
Um, so my thinking is I'm going to put it as close as possible, so it's the shortest route for them to get there and get back.
What's your biggest worry with having 400 people there with a skeleton crew?
Really, my biggest worry isn't about monitoring. I mean, of course, we should always have safety as our first thing that we're thinking
Right.
about how to make sure that we have a safe program and that we've thought through those kind of logistic things. But um, my biggest, not to, I don't know if this is a rabbit hole or not for you, but in the past I've had a much bigger budget, and so I am having to
Okay.
cut back. Last year I had 24 teachers, and you're pretty
Wow.
spot on with the number of teachers that I'm going to be able to staff.
Okay.
Um, I'm starting with 17, and then as kids complete, I plan to taper down. So on paper right now, I'm over budget. But I know in reality, as kids complete, I won't need as many teachers to monitor.
Okay.
Um, so I anticipate being able to, and also some teachers will do it, and then as it progresses, they're ready to cut out for summer anyway, and so they'll
Okay. I didn't think of
volunteer.
that.
They'll volunteer to be the first person cut.
Okay.
So that's how it kind of works.
Okay.
Um,
So in essence, if I go back to obviously here, you could have someone insane you're knocking out like half the time or something like that. You could say, all right, they're going to go 34 hours, and that would be.
yeah, and what I do actually is some of those teachers are going to be 10 days credit recovery, and then they're going to be 2 days um, EOC. And so this the
Uh,
same person doing. So
Covering this part.
it's definitely important to um, have a person with content knowledge for EOC.
Yeah.
But for credit recovery, Edgenuity while it's ideal and like your plan, that is best case scenario, be able to put the kids with a math teacher when they're doing math credit recovery. Um, but in reality, and what actually happens is you'll have a ton of social studies teachers or a ton of career and technology teachers that fill out the survey, and you just don't have very many English, science people that want to do summer school, and so you have to use what you have. So, and
Do
and
you
and really,
Sorry, I was gonna cut you off real quick. Do you try to search out certain teachers and ask them specifically? Like, I just feel like you have obviously ones that have done the past. You got ones that you probably trust and you can know, but like, obviously it's open to people to do. But like, I mean, I feel like there's a point where you want to try finding the ones that you know are going to do a better job than others. I guess you can kind of put it. And like, especially with you're saying, I guess sometimes you can't find that science teacher. Can you try to like talk them into it?
yeah, no, I mean, I for sure, we're always pretty lucky.
Okay.
So I always have more teachers express interest than I have positions available.
Okay.
I had, I think 38 teachers reach out to me, and I can only hire 17,
I gotcha. Okay.
Um, so I do look at, if I don't know the teacher well, I'll look at their, um, their student data throughout the year. What was the
Yeah.
student success rate? And then also look at their behavior data too. Because these are kids, like I was saying a little earlier, I mean, most of these kids come from at-risk backgrounds. They might not
Yes.
have the best social skills yet, and
Yep.
you have to be a patient person to do summer school.
For sure.
And so, if you've submitted a ton of behavior referrals throughout the year, that tells me you don't have a great classroom management, and you're still working on that. And so,
Okay.
um, I may choose somebody that has better classroom management, has better evidence of classroom management and student academic success rates
Okay.
over somebody that's still working on it.
Makes sense. Let me jump back to my slide here. Um, let's see, setting guidelines for students on day one. I'm assuming that's a big thing of just setting expectations because I'm assuming with the 12 days, it's 3 weeks, but it's Monday through Thursday. Is that right?
It's spanning over 3 weeks. So the first week will be Wednesday through Friday. The second week will be a
Okay.
5-day week, and then the
Okay.
last week will be a 4-day week.
Okay. That makes sense. So
Um,
just starting a little bit later so you're not just jumping on top of it right away.
yeah, and that looks a couple different ways. I've done it whole group in the commons,
Okay.
with every kid. Um, I don't find that to be as effective as spending a little bit more time going room to room and talking with the smaller groups. I feel like that for me has been more effective in getting the message across. Um, just that smaller audience, and then also the teacher that they're primarily going to be with.
It
Um,
reinforces stuff for them, I'm sure, right?
yeah, it's a little bit more organic a conversation,
Okay.
and then also if I walk into the room and see students that I know that I have a history with, know that they
Yeah.
might have off-task behaviors, might have non-compliance behaviors, those kind of things, I can be more specific about the needs of that room and what behaviors I anticipate coming
Okay.
from that room, And so rather than focusing on attendance for one room, I might focus on staying awake for another room, or
Right.
speaking to your teacher respectfully, those kinds of things.
Do you, if I'm a student and let's say I've got two classes and obviously Edgenuity's at your own pace, if I get done on day 10, do I still have to come back those last 2 days?
No, that's the one. That's one of the big motivators. That's what we
Okay.
we really try and motivate them to make a good chunk of progress every day. The goal is 20% progress through a course.
Okay.
So if you're doing that, you can finish a course in 5 days. Like I was saying earlier, we try and get the kids in there that need a lot of courses, and hopefully
Right.
they can finish 2 or 3 courses over the summer. Um, and so we do that. Of course, a big motivator is to get to your summer break earlier. You get to leave as soon as you're
Correct.
done. But most of our kids need the full 12 days. And so to
Okay.
motivate them to finish, we have a little bit of money that we use from the campus general fund. So it doesn't
Okay.
come out of CAP. It doesn't come out of the CPE funds or SCE funds. It comes, Thomas will, our principal will allocate money for
Yeah.
us to buy snacks and drinks and stuff like that. And so we've got it set up to where as a kid has finished 50% of a course, they get to come in on break and turn in a certificate from the teacher for a treat. And then when they
Okay.
finish a course, they already have to come into the office for the counselor to confirm and then update their transcript. But
Okay.
while they're there doing that work, we celebrate. The campus secretary, the summer school secretary will, um, we have noisemakers and
Well,
we
so
try and make a big
you
deal
got
out
like
of
the
it.
bell or whatever that you
For
could ring in
sure.
the
Oh yeah,
hallway.
yeah,
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 that's
yeah.
cool.
We try and have fun with it, make and get them pumped up so that they're excited to complete courses.
I know it's a way different. When I first started teaching at MacArthur, it was you're only teaching geometry. You got to go through whatever geometry for the whole 3 weeks. And once they're done, they've got their geometry, and they might do two classes. It would be like you got one group in the early morning for like 2 hours, and you got another group. So like the Edgenuity obviously has made it a good thing for students to catch up on a lot of that. Um, and then I guess that's where you really need to have the right teacher, or do they switch rooms then? If they're obviously you got a full day of 6.5 hours, is it split up into like three different periods, or what's your split on the day?
We have, we have breakfast and then they get started. We'll do a morning break.
Okay.
Um, and essentially that's just for them to get out and stretch their legs, have a little bit of social time in the hallway. Some kids choose not to. They stay in the room and keep chugging.
Okay.
But most kids, and adults need a break. Um,
Yeah.
and
True.
then the big midday break is lunch, and
Okay.
then we'll do a break again in the afternoon. And so the morning and afternoon breaks are the two times where they can go and um, get that 50% completion
Okay.
treat. And if they finish 100%, they will leave the room to go. But they stay
Okay.
with the same teacher outside of those three breaks, lunch, morning, and afternoon. They're with the same teacher the whole time.
Okay.
Um, except when as we get into the eighth, ninth, 10th day, um, I start cutting teachers because either they want to
Yeah.
be cut or because we don't have as many students anymore.
Right.
Um, then I might combine classes, that kind of thing. So they'll move over to their neighbor's room or something like that.
I gotcha. Um, Going through the rest of my list, obviously, I put on here only allowing one absence. Do you guys have a rule on that?
Yeah, a general rule is no more than two absences. Your second
Okay.
absence is going to be your last day, but that's kind of a paper tiger, right? In reality, we want these kids to be
Correct.
there. So we say that, I'm not going to let you just come in willy nilly. Um, but if life happens and you have a good reason, I'll make exceptions.
I gotcha. Getting into it, looks like I've got checking in for summer starts. That's what was nice about your sheet here when I was going through it. Obviously, you have attendance, you've got all your students there. I'm assuming that's how are you doing this by class typically, or are they kind of checking in with the secretary as they come in for the day? Obviously, you can have a ton of different names, and then it's always all the coding that you have for each one as well.
Yeah. So for example, those first three columns are just those will be frozen in time, right? So that is the student's
Yeah.
name, ID, where they're assigned, and then each block of color. So that first set of pink, that'll be up to the teacher in the room to fill out. And so,
Okay, so this is
like
open to the teachers, so they're filling it out. That makes sense.
yeah, this one, all the other pages will be locked, but the attendance page is going to be open to all 17 teachers. It's always a little
Okay.
nerve-wracking to have 17
Yeah.
people in there editing at the same time, but it's ultimately been the best way to figure it out and have it all in one place. So like column G, um, you know, Johnny there, John Doe will say he's working on algebra like you're filling in. The teacher will have a conference with that kid at some point in the day and log what percent they completed. and they'll go into Edgenuity. They'll see how much, what percent they completed. It is all documented in multiple places.
Okay.
And then the grade is actually, um, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if that is their
Mm,
classification or the grade that they made on the course.
okay.
Really, it's a pass fail always, right?
I
So,
gotcha.
um, and then that's what they do every day. So the teachers are expected to take attendance, and then also have at least one conference with a kid daily
Okay.
about their progress.
Uh, Getting into it. Let's see, checking in summer schools, going back, Excel sheets, going through there. Discipline. Obviously, you're going to run into some discipline. It looks like you. It looks like from what you're saying, and it makes sense starting from up front of setting that expectation. I feel like you getting around, you're going to know who your kids are going to be that are going to be those issues. I put it on here where I'm like, hey, it's one warning. I'm assuming it's probably more situational with kid, and then what type of discipline it actually is for that class. Sometimes I'm sure it might be just the teacher, or the students not working with a teacher, so maybe it just needs to be a move to a different teacher. I'm assuming if it's like fighting, it's just you're out of here. See you later.
Yeah, I mean, we still use the code of conduct, so
Okay.
it's leveled by severity of behavior, right? So if it's a level
Yeah.
one behavior, minor disruptions, tardy back from break, that kind of stuff,
Okay.
they'll receive warnings. If it's persistent for multiple days, I might exit them. If it just seems like the student and the staff member button heads, I might move them to another room. Um, but if you're cussing out a teacher, you're getting in a fight,
Yeah.
you're found way out of area, you're upstairs or something like that, I'm going to dismiss you.
Okay. Well, that's the big part of that. Like, I feel like this is the stuff that I really like looking at. I would love to get even more into some of the numbers because that just really intrigues me, kind of looking at all that stuff and how it works, and it's all the stuff you never hear about as a teacher. So it was fun. Um, I guess my biggest takeaways makes sense on the chillers and how you can say, all right, for cost effective of the building, that goes into feeding that, which brought into the whole part about the dining services, which is crazy to think that they had to like transport all that stuff. So that makes for a whole nother level of like, oh, aha, that's crazy to think about. So it was fun
Yeah.
kind of hearing some of those issues or problems and how the workarounds for them.
Another thing that they have to do is they have to bring in all the catering equipment. So they'll bring in all
Okay.
the rolling coolers for the milk and juices, and they'll
Yeah.
bring in all the hot trays and stuff. They would just leave it in that space for the summer, but yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes
I'm
stuff.
assuming they're renting that and they don't own that either.
Klein's pretty good. Klein has this
Okay.
equipment already because
Okay.
there's a lot of catering that happens over at the multipurpose center, and
Okay. That
you
makes sense
know,
then.
at the athletic building, those kind of places. So we have all that equipment, but you gotta rent it. It is a finite
Right.
amount of equipment.
Correct.
Well, you have to reserve it, I should say. It doesn't,
I
it's
get what
already
you're
client
saying now.
property, but you got to reserve it.
So thank you, Mr. Bonner. I appreciate for your time.
You got
Um,
it. You got it.
I definitely I'm gonna come up a day or two for summer school. I just would like to see it and be around it, and so I'll reach out to you on that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love to have you.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Have a good weekend.